Let's see where we are. Okay, hi. If you have joined us, hi, Leah. Nice to see you here. And Irmeli, nice to see you. And I said hello to everybody else, I think. Okay. The nature of the seven cosmic paths. Continuing. Yeah. Very interesting. You know, it's been a while since I've read this material, and as we all know about Master DK's work, it's new all the time. Only three Buddhas of activity. All right. The training of these masters on the third path might be described as an intensive study of a most exalted form of the science of impression. So science of impression involved with our little approach to the science of impression comes on the first subplane of the mental plane with the city of some city or other, right? It's called by a special name. Spiritual telepathy on our own little level. But theirs is a most exalted version of that which we begin to learn on the higher levels of the mental plane. The supreme task of a planetary logos is to impress his sevenfold body of manifestation via its seven states of consciousness and the seven centers with his will and intention. It reminds me somewhat of the eighth law in the rules for disciples and initiates. The eighth rule concerns a law which is called the law of the supplementary seven. Maybe you ran into it. But all these septonates are connected under this particular law, and some of them finally become supplementary, no longer needed. So he has various ways of doing this. There are seven states of consciousness of the seven planes of the cosmic physical plane, and he has his seven centers. And some of these centers we're familiar with. The hierarchy is considered a heart center, Shambhala head center. What is the new group of world servers considered as a chakra within the planetary logos? New group of world servers. Let's think. Oh, yes. The Ajna Center. Yes, yes. Boy, this group is quick. And there are lesser centers. Although it's not necessarily a straightforward thing, because things are described differently, and sometimes cities are described as centers, or continents are described as centers. We're just dealing with one globe. We have to think about the higher correspondences on other globes and chains. But anyway, the main principle is clear. His will and intention has to come through, and it's the will and intention of a greater being which he accesses via the science of impression, and then he impresses. He is impressed, and then he impresses. And it's nice to know, isn't it, that the planetary logos is working on us as cells in his body. As monads, we are cells in his body of, in his chakras. And in terms of actually seeing how that works, it's a little less straightforward than we might think, but the principle is clear. These are progressively imparted. The will and intention are progressively imparted as the etheric body is brought into an increasing state of receptivity through the awakening of the 7 planetary centers, and primarily the 3 major centers. I suppose that that is, from one perspective, Shambhala hierarchy in humanity. That's one way of doing it. But of course, we're told, on a different level that London, Tokyo, New York, Darjeeling, Geneva, and so forth are planetary centers as well. The etheric body of the planetary logos, well, mostly the cosmic ethers, though the higher mental plane is in an unusual position with respect to him, whereas it is not with respect to the solar logos. The masters thus in training gain experience of the methods used by the planetary logoi of all the 7 sacred planets, and the training is therefore an exceedingly lengthy one. Gain experience of the methods used by the planetary logoi of all the 7 sacred planets. So they have to be exposed in some way to the methods of the major planets. How is this done? And we already arrived at the idea that indeed it is a lengthy training because of the number of Mahamanvantaras that has passed between a planetary logos and a master. It must be remembered, however, that except in dense physical incarnation and therefore conditioned by the brain and its special limitations, the spiritual man is not conscious of time once he is separated from the physical body. Maybe that's why it takes so long to get back into incarnation for some types. Though, we're told that if we can achieve continuity of consciousness of a reasonable kind, we can retain our mental and astral body and seek relatively immediate reincarnation to get on with the work. Yes. That would indicate that although so ascent, you say, ascent from the, yes, and are you talking about after death, or are you talking about the initiatory process? No quick fix when you're going up. Path of descent could be reading between the lines. You could miss a couple of the steps. Yes. Well, I think that descent on the path of involution is a rather regulated process, just the way it is on the path of evolution. But under special cases, when you already have a self-conscious human being, there are ways that you can qualify out of certain steps. In other words, if you've achieved the continuity of consciousness, there may be no reason under the law of economy to dissolve your present mental and astral body. And besides, the need of the planet is for rapidly re-entering units who can pick up the work where they left it off. I mean, when you kind of look at the Dalai Lama and those types, they seem to remember what they've been and what they were doing, and they have continuity of consciousness from life to life. So they've earned that greater rapidity of return, I think. But for most people, it wouldn't do much good, because they haven't reached that point. Anyway, we're not conscious of time, he says, when separated from the physical brain. Now, there is this thing in It's in esoteric astrology where it basically says, look, the mind is Mercury, but the brain is Saturn, Lord of Time. So there's no question that the brain slows us down a great deal because of the necessity for a more sequential processing of information, at least in most cases. And when we're finished with the brain, we can experience in such a way that things occur more simultaneously than sequentially. That's the Uranus-Saturn relationship. Saturn is the sequence. So, still a lengthy one, even though time may not seem to pass. There's such a mystery connected with time. It requires a Uranian approach to overcome the limitations of how we think about time. We have some scientists telling us that from their experiments it appears that time can move backwards as well. But we have to translate what that means in practical terms. It's not necessarily as Harry Potter would have it, you know. It's not that we necessarily are moving backward and undoing what was done, because by so doing we would affect the doings of every other one who had done at the same time, because our doing at that original time touched all. And by going back in time that way, we negate what they had done. So I'm not sure we're allowed that. But there's much to be said in the revelation of the nature of time. Ultimately, it turns out to be an illusion, even though the entire great breadth, is the irreducible duality. Irreducible duality. Yes, and test. Let's just see. Am I looking at it and not seeing it? Oh, I haven't read it yet. Time is the sequential registration by the brain of states of awareness and of progressive contacts with phenomena. Well, I just think it means it's true that the progressed chart brings us ever new cycles and exposures to new energy, but I think he's just using this in a general sense, meaning as we move through life, we have contacts one after another with various types of phenomena. I don't think he's making at this point an astrological statement, even though progressions do bring new energies. But even in this moment, when progressions haven't changed much, I could move through this room doing different things and I would have progressive contacts. So sequential registration. Now, as I say, it takes Uranus to overcome Saturn. It takes Uranus to overcome Saturn. In other words, everything that happens sequentially and that we register sequentially could be registered simultaneously if we had the expansion of consciousness to do it. And I have in my Infinity book some of the some examples of what that looks like. I'm trying to remember one of the examples is if I'm on a planet as a tiny unit and I'm moving, then one after another events are impacting my consciousness. In other words, my perception produces what I call an event, and one after another, those perceptions impact my consciousness as if they were events. But if I move away from the planet, the many actions that I perceived while on the planet all start merging into one and become one action only, because I cannot differentiate by sight anymore moving parts. It's just one thing. Eventually it becomes no action at all at the vanishing point. So it all depends on your point of perspective. If you're immersed as a tiny unit among many units, sequence rules. But if you've stood way, way back, then the many actions become one action. And all the many things that you perceived sequentially are perceived as if simultaneously at the same time. So distance of abstraction produces the perception of simultaneity. Something like that. Yes. A number of us do. Yes. Saturn. Oh, I see how you mean. I see how you mean. If I had Saturn-Uranus conjunction and Saturn progressed on and Uranus progresses more slowly, so Saturn would move away. But in a way, you're always impressed with that original state. And it can mean many things, don't you think? Maybe Saturn has been released from Uranus in some ways. Because, there's lower Uranus, lower Saturn. And let's just say, let's think about Uranus and Saturn. Many of us say, well, Saturn keeps us from being free. So we want to be free. Aren't we grateful when Saturn moves away from Uranus and now we can be ourselves? On the other hand, Uranus brings in many erratic, chaotic, unregulated energies. And Saturn brings in the law. So at last, I can live a lawful life according to the plan without erratic, spontaneous, upsetting events that make me so undisciplined that I will not conform. So you can turn it the other way too. But I think that for those of us who have the Saturn-Uranus conjunction, it means we have an opportunity to put together the etheric and the physical plane in a integrated manner. Because Saturn is always the material part in that context, and Uranus is the etheric part. Put them both together, and then you get the integrated etheric physical that we all want. On the other hand, it's filled with struggle, because like Master Moria said, that Armageddon is the battle between Saturn and Uranus. And in that case, Saturn is not the good guy. Saturn is all the old conservative forces, and Uranus is the possibility of progress. So these things can mean many things. And it all depends what's our ruling planet as well. If I've got Libra rising, how shall I look at this? I've got a Saturn-Uranus conjunction with Libra rising. They're both rulers of Libra. Which one is more important? It will depend on my stage of evolution. If I'm an initiate, Saturn will be more important. If I'm a spiritual disciple, Uranus will be more important. So it's all very relative. But anyway, this is a very important definition of time. Time is the sequential registration by the brain of states of awareness and the progressive contacts with phenomena. I mean, what is an event but a state of awareness, a registration of some impact as a unitary thing? And what is an event for some is not for others because they didn't register it. So we get into the philosophy of perception here. There is no such thing as time on the inner planes, but then he adds, fortunately, as humanity understands it. Because in a way, time rules the great breath. See, wherever there is duality, there's a possibility of time. Duality and time are actually, in a way, equivalent. So here's this out-breath and in-breath and out-breath and in-breath forever. It's a very Saturnian thing, and it happens in a way in time throughout duration. Not only that, but there's a strong possibility that the out-breath and the in-breath are timed. That if you laid them over each other for eternity, you would find that they, well, this is a difficult problem, but you would find that they measured the same in a way in the world of Maya. So, there's a question here. I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but, does the universe last as long as it lasts, or does it last as long as the will of the universal logos makes it last? In other words, is the universe extendable in time? Or, as Blavatsky sometimes seems to say, when the time's up, the time's up, and if you're left without finishing, there you are without finishing. I can see that about lesser pralayas, but I can't see that about the ultimate pralaya by the universal logos. But anyway, time is something we don't understand as those on higher planes understand it. And remember this: the planetary logos is a being separated from us by many Mahamanvantaras, and the planetary logos has a space-time schedule. A space-time schedule. The planetary logos must perform certain things within a certain measure of time. Otherwise, his role within the whole is not upheld. So the planetary logos respects time, even as we know it. And what is the result? One of the practical results of this is that now there must be group initiation. Or there must be group initiation, or the planetary logos won't make his schedule. So that sounds pretty much time the way man understands it. And, it's also true that there is a measurement of duration, even for the solar logos and for other beings. So I believe that within the general cosmos, time as we know it also does occur when we're talking about great beings working in the outer worlds. As far as psychological time, that's a different thing. Because we all know, with the poet Blake, you can see infinity in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. So whether psychologically time seems to last forever or for an instant, this is operating according to different laws. And remember, we live in a universe where psyche is predominant. The whole thing is a thought form. The whole thing is a perception. So naturally, time as we know it doesn't exist in these inner psychic states. And you've probably experienced that in our dream life, right? Something, somebody's measuring your dreams and, whatever, and you wake up having felt that you've been through 50 years, and they say, well, you've just been blinking on and off here for about 3.5 minutes. In terms of objective, measurable time, the psychological perception of time has been entirely different than its objective measure. Anyway, I find this question of time to be the most difficult problem of all. It seems much easier to solve the issue of what is space and what is it not than what is time, at least for my type of psyche. But after all, Saturn is an older planetary god than Jupiter, and Saturn rules time and Jupiter rules space. And absolute space is ruled by Uranus. But that would be a digression, and I really do want to finish this one before lunch. There are only cycles of activity and non-activity. So that's how the Tibetan gets around it, basically. No such thing as time, but just cycles of activity or non-activity. This non-activity for masters on the third path takes the form of cyclic periods of contemplation and mental activity, followed by active periods of energy direction to impress the will of certain planetary logoi and their agents upon the council chamber of our planet in particular. So, in a way, they're being like Nirmanakayas. They're receiving in contemplation. Then they go into their active mode, and they start to impress what they received upon the outer form. So they really do function according to a dualistic cycle here. Okay, bye-bye, Marianne. We'll see you. Okay, bye-bye. And their agents upon the council chamber of the planet of our planet in particular, and upon other planets as their training is perfected. So these masters operate not only on our Shambhala, but on other Shambhalas, so to speak, on other planetary head centers, other planetary head centers, when they become more well-trained. It is the impulsive incentive of these masters which bridges the link between the monad on the monadic plane and the three worlds of dense expression on the cosmic physical plane. In this process, the antikarana between the spiritual man and incarnation and the spiritual triad is aided and finally constructed, but this is only incidental to the far greater work of relating Shambhala to all kingdoms. So it's the work of this kind of master that helps us build the antikarana. The work of this type of master on this path helps us build the antikarana. Because unless we have our antikarana, okay, well, now just, it's blue tack chewing gum time again here. Okay, so unless we have the antikarana, God can't get through. And the planetary logos, as we have studied, is attempting to tune in with the solar logos, impress his will upon all members of his planet. And the antikarana is not just a one-way street. It's not just so we can contact the triad or something like that. The antikarana is the way by which the greater deity, planetary logos, impresses us, and through us, many who do not have what is called the antikarana. I don't know. What is it? I mean, sometimes I think things are alive, don't you? You know, they just, I really, you know, I'm looking at this and I say, why can't this stay in place? Okay. All right. The number of masters deciding on this path, as I said, is not large. It's not large. It's a very long path. The training is peculiarly arduous, which means difficult in the extreme, and is followed when opportunity is offered to function as a planetary logos by an act of sacrifice which confines them indefinitely. I mean, and there was not even a specified amount of time until the job is done. It confines them indefinitely to the limitations of the ring past knot of their body of manifestation, a planet. It is for this reason that Sanat Kumara has forever been called the Great Sacrifice. Sanat Kumara is the planetary logos emanated forth as a ray in manifestation. So how long does the Great Sacrifice stay at his post? It's not like, oh, time's up, wait for next Mahamanvantara, so it's until the last weary pilgrim finds his way home. So if you take charge of those who are in your planetary body of manifestation, you have to assist all those who truly strive. Now, if you willfully set yourself against the will of the Logos, as the members of the Black Lodge do, then that planetary Logos is entitled to say, in a way, except for you now. Because as we were just reading about the members of the Black Lodge, they have no hope within this solar system. So the planetary Logos, which is a chakra within the body of manifestation of the solar Logos, cannot say, hold on, other chakras, wait a second, I've got a few stragglers here, and I just need to save them, because he couldn't possibly do it. They have to find their way back. They've been repulsed, under the law of repulse, driven back to find their way to the door more legitimately. Okay, let's see, we should be reaching the end now. We have reached the end. We have reached the end. Now, would it help to spend 2 minutes or 3 minutes to discuss anything that may have impressed us about this morning's reading? I mean, we can get rid of the response that this is a difficult subject, because yes, it is. It's a difficult subject. All these are very difficult. I seem to be not very clear about 2 lines. If you think about the returning Nirvanis, the line of solar angels, they are. Yes, they are all, they are actually heading towards becoming planetary logoi. Breathed. Let's see if I can get it. Okay. Wait. I got to hear you now. You just have to. The Chohans at the present time, yes, they belong to the. Let's see if I can. I believe it's from, but remember, not all men become solar angels. So that's the beginning. They choose other paths, and there's a long time for the duration of this system yet. So they have a long time to train in other places before returning to the next incarnation of this solar system. So Chohans, for instance, let's just see. Men become solar angels, some of them. Solar angels, some of them, become planetary logoi in groups. Now what I'm trying to, in groups, I believe that there are other ways that solar angels can go. It tends to say so, but I think there are many alternatives. I'm just having trouble. My computer is quite full at this moment, and I'm not being able to. 7 groups of solar angels, slow production. I want to see if I can find anything here. Solar angels. Well, I want to find. Here is the reference. The Treatise who form the egoic body of a human being, and there are more than one kind, do not alone and isolated form planetary logoi. The 49 groups of solar fires concerned in the great work are those spoken of, and they become 49 planetary logoi in connection with 7 solar systems. So this really has to be studied carefully. It's in Cosmic Fire 879. In connection with 7 solar. In them is hid the mystery of the 3 who become the 16, united or synthesized by the 17th, a correspondence upon cosmic levels of the 7 with the 8th sphere. This must remain practically an insoluble mystery to man at present. So, you know, if we don't understand it, he has given us permission not to understand. The only thing I can say is that in various references, solar angels do become planetary rays. If we go to 844, that magnificent chart in Cosmic Fire, it says about the same thing. Yes. The solar Treatise, here it is. The highest 3 groups will become, notice, the highest 3 groups will become major planetary logoi. The lower 4 groups become minor planetary logoi. So the planetary logos is a group being. But maybe if we were writing this book from the standpoint of the Deva evolution, different kinds of paths would be discussed. This is mostly for man. There's a Chohan, yes? There's 2 paths? Okay, there's the path of the planetary logos, and there's the path of the solar angels. Okay, yes. As a destination, yes. Yes, there's a line of 2, yes. Yes. Okay. Some are invited to become planetary logoi, and we've been all through all the yeah. Well, look, our Mahamanvantara can end, so what? They're still doing in the place where they've gone, because they have to, the ones on Sirius have to leave our system to become solar angels first. Now they have to come back here. They have to come back here and work with men on the solar angelic path. And then they can group together and become planetary logoi. But the direct path of planetary logoi takes so long, such a long path, with so many stops and steps along the way, that when one group becomes a planetary logos, the other group can become a planetary logos. Now, in other words, it can take them equally as long. Now, here's another thing. Some planets are Davic, more Davic than human, and some planets are more human than Davic. And that may be a distinguishing feature of how the planets were formed, whether by solar angels or whether by those who were progressing as men towards planetary logoi. And there's another thing. Those who came from the early solar system altogether, but still they are men at the present time. In the history or age of the monad, those who are from this earth chain, from this solar system, could be more Davic than those who came from others. And here's one thing that's left out. We know that solar angels group together to form planetary logoi. Is it possible that those men who do not go to Sirius, but who are on the line towards planetary logoi, also have some way of merging their consciousness, so they do not arrive as single individuals to the status of planetary logoi, but are also composite individuals in the same way that the solar angels become composite individuals? Well, it may be, it may not. I don't know. I don't know. But how many men become one being is still something that needs to be discussed. Well, but wait. That's angelic. Does he say that those who are on the planetary log? Yes. He does start to say that. He does, and you can piece it together. For instance, manus of different kinds are a step, but there a man can be a man. To be a globe lord is a step. To be a chain lord is a step. To be a Buddha of activity is to be a step. I've left some out here. But along the way, there are all of these, even a planetoid, a little planet. See, maybe before, and an asteroid, a planetoid, a non-sacred planet, a sacred planet, and so forth. There are many steps along the hierarchy of ascent. And it seems to take a very long time, because whereas solar angels can go away, or say men, they go away. And by the time the next solar system happens, the next Mahamanvantara, they're back as solar angels from Sirius, let's say. And when that solar system disappears, maybe they're ready to get together, they go into the sun, and then they're breathed out as a planetary life. That's very quick. But for these beings who are on the planetary logos path, many Mahamanvantaras ago, they were a master, which means that many solar system cycles have passed between what they are now and, so look, the time equation is very hard. And those who are solar angels, they cannot jump when they go back to the sun. No, no, maybe they cannot, but maybe they cannot immediately do that. But nevertheless, the 49 great groups of solar fires concern the great worker spoken of. Now, there is a sentence here somewhere about being breathed out by the sun at a certain point, and I'm not sure. I thought I had that, but at least here it describes the 49 groups. The idea is they emerge from the sun as ray lords or as rays of a planetary life. And I'm not finding the exact reference, but let's just say we don't know all the steps along the way in the hierarchy of solar angels. You've got a sevenfold hierarchy of solar angels. Take a look at the hierarchy of man, all the way from the Christ to the newly individualized animal man who is a savage, from the Christ to the savage. What if there's that kind of span in the solar angelic hierarchy? What about that? And why shouldn't there be? So there may be all these developmental steps for those solar angels. Look, some solar angels form part of the egoic lotus of man. Other solar angels are like the whole egoic lotus. There's a whole hierarchy of solar angels in the egoic lotus of man. In other words, there are many solar Petries in our causal body. But a great one may breathe out the lesser ones, which may breathe out the lesser ones. We would have to study that by emanation. So what I was trying to say, the time equation is very difficult to solve. He's not being specific about it. The only one thing we do know is that in the last solar system they were men, now they're solar angels. We are men now. In the next solar system, many of us will be solar angels. It takes one solar system to do that. But what kind of solar angels will we be? Will we be the little guys, the middle guys, or the big guys? Because they have a whole range of evolutionary process. And maybe it takes more than one Mahamanvantara to become a very, very highly evolved solar angel. Earth is called Mahadeva. Great Deva, great Deva. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, look, it would give the impression that the son of Kamara is from the solar angel line. Okay, well, okay, we can't really start the path to Sirius, but we certainly are working up the right subject, the subject of the solar angels, for when we start that after lunch. Sanat Kumara is not on the Syrian line. He makes a very clear statement about that. And I will try to find that. So, what path is Sanat Kumara taking? Sanat Kumara is not on the Syrian line. But, to speak in symbols not too deeply veiled, Lucifer, son of the morning, is closely related. I mean, all of us human beings, in a way, are Lucifer. And hence the large numbers of human beings who will become disciples in the Syrian Lodge. This is the true Blue Lodge. And to become a candidate in that lodge, the initiate of the third degree has to become a lowly aspirant, not even an initiate. The third degree transfigured initiate is just a little aspirant. with all the true and full initiations awaiting him within the sunshine of the major sun. So it's not with these cosmic paths that one leads to the other, then to the next, to the next. There are a number of different ways of becoming planetary logoi. As a matter of fact, between path 3 and path 5, you can go back and forth. You can go from the ray path to the planetary logos path, or from the planetary logos path to the ray path. So it's not just a rigid system of progression. Different types of beings can take different ways and arrive at the same point. Which way did Sanat Kumara come? Well, okay, what was he? He was a planetary logos in the previous solar system. Maybe he was with our solar logos from the beginning, 5 Mahamanvantaras ago. What was he long before that? Well, who knows? Maybe he was one of those planetary logoi who was formed by solar angels. Or maybe he was formed by groups of men in way, way former times. We don't know where Sanat Kumara, as our planetary logos, really came from. We do know this, that he runs a system, even though he is not on the Syrian line, in which the Syrian system of initiation makes everyone in his system progress towards him. So he uses the Syrian system of initiation, but he's certainly not going to Sirius. Nor do we know that he necessarily came from it. The Lord of the Flames, the connection. Well, look, here's what happened. Our solar logos underwent an initiation from Sirius, and our tiny little planet, which means Sanat Kumara in a way, has a special relationship to Sirius. Sirius cares about our little planet. So there is some kind of relationship between Sanat Kumara and the great Lord of Sirius, but he's not on the Syrian line, whatever that means. Sanat Kumara, who is a planetary logos, is going to become a solar logos because he's on the path of the solar logoi. And maybe that's true of every other planet in our solar system also. Maybe together they will become a solar logos. That's who is Lucifer then? He seems to imply that Lucifer is humanity. You know, which is kind of interesting, like who's the devil anyway? Lucifer is the fallen angel. Here, there is a special reference here. It goes, there's not too many Lucifers in these books, which is nice. There it is. We have Shambhala is the holy city, Melchizedek. The hierarchy is the New Jerusalem, the example of which is the world's Savior. Humanity is ruled by Lucifer, the son of the morning. Humanity is the prodigal son. So there's a very close connection here of Lucifer and humanity. How do we understand that humanity is? That we have understood that we are from Sanat Kumara. We are made in his image. If we are Lucifer, how do we understand that we are created in the image of Sanat Kumara? Yeah, I think there's something here about Venus being the true ruler of humanity. Venus, Lucifer. Sanat Kumara, as monads, we may have pre-existed our association with Sanat Kumara. We may come from other planets altogether as monads. And when our planet, under Sanat Kumara, was formed, certain monads came together from other planets and then were impressed by Sanat Kumara and took forms according to the form of Sanat Kumara. But as monads, they originated in other places. Like, if I talk to you, what's your ray? That's one thing. But if I talk to you about what planet are you from, that's another thing. Okay, well, I'm a first-ray monad from Uranus. That's great. I'm a first-ray monad from Vulcan. And that colors your nature. So Sanat Kumara did not make us at all. Sanat Kumara is supervising and impressing our development. And will we always stay with Sanat Kumara? Well, what happens when our Earth is absorbed by Saturn? What happens to all of us as parts of Sanat Kumara? Maybe some of us have a destiny outside our planetary ring pass knot altogether. Maybe we won't even be part of this solar system when Sanat Kumara, the Earth, is absorbed by Saturn, and when Saturn is absorbed by Uranus, and so forth. So this gets to the question of the origin of the monad and the destiny of the monad, and in a way, that is what we are dealing with. I will say this is my intuition on the matter. Wherever we go, we all meet up at the central spiritual sun. That's the big roundup. That's the place where all roads converge. No matter where you may have traveled as a monad within this larger system, it all meets at the hub of the wheel on the day be with us of the supercosmic Logos, the one about whom not be said. When he reaches his, he, it, she, whatever, climactic moment of development, everybody is back together. Of course, that's just the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, because then whatever the Pleiades is, and whatever that super Logos is, this chart will show us what happens. This chart is called Parabrahm, and you've seen it before, but the implications are, let's say, you meet up at the hub of the wheel. That's the Pleiades, let's say. Then you just look out and you discover there's six others just like you. And then you have to go and meet up at another wheel, which is just one of seven, and so forth, until everybody meets up at the one and only place there is. So, in other words, the paths home are many, and it's very difficult for us to say what our paths will be. What we're trying to do is just learn a little bit about a few of the paths that are offered to man. How we get there, when we get there, how fast it takes, who we travel with and don't, whether we can branch off left, right, whatever, who knows? He gives us some hints. He tells us a ray can become a planetary logos. From Sirius, in groups, you can become planetary logoi. From the Earth, there's a path of the planetary logoi. 3 paths lead to the planetary logoi. But how many paths lead to the solar logoi? Man himself can begin to tread that. You don't necessarily have to become a planetary logos first. So there is a rich diversity of methods to reach the same place. And of course we cannot know what they all are. All we can do is keep our minds open, and when we are puzzled by the Tibetan statements, and how can we help but be puzzled? It's so advanced material. We just say, okay, there's an apparent contradiction here. I have not resolved this contradiction. I just hold the contradiction until I can resolve it. And all the pieces fall into place gradually, and the light begins to dawn, and what looked like a contradiction before begins to be resolved. And it takes a huge patience with this kind of work if one wants the pieces to fall into place. Now, it is the time. And wanting to live beyond my square, I feel I have to release you, unless, of course, we're going to take food away from the patients. We could wait just a tiny bit longer to make sure that they eat first. Or do you think, Martha, we should, being a Taurus, not many, Martha, who is a Taurus, has said we should go for the food first rather than wait. Now, what do you think? Okay, look, we're ready. This little conversation about how to become a planetary logos has set us up for the study of the path that most human beings are on. So that's what we'll take up after lunch. And all you have to do is use the virtue of Vulcan, which is what? Pressing, transforming. That wouldn't hurt. No, that wouldn't hurt. I had in mind the virtue of endurance. Vulcan has this amazing ability to endure over time, which is why it's so useful in Virgo, because Virgo is the womb of time and space, and you just simply have to persist until the birth of enlightenment comes, which will surely be by 4 o'clock this afternoon. If you're not enlightened by 4 o'clock this afternoon, then maybe I should just never come here again. Yes. Yes, that's right. That's exactly how I feel. You either get it or die. Now you understand my teaching approach. Have you understood that? Yeah. I've often felt that I have the planet Vulcan on Mercury. You know, so anyway, but now, yes, that's it. Oh, that's good. It's good. Say more. Okay, now your lunar lords get a little break. So enjoy lunch. And you can imagine for a few moments you're not coming back, but then we will return by that. Yes, I'll come back to solar lord. What are you eating? All right. 2 o'clock then. 2 o'clock. No later. No later. All right. Bye-bye. Remember, as you walk out of the room, your steps should be heavy, rhythmic, steady, plodding. Yes, that's right. But the speed of approach is faster when there's Danish pastry waiting. All right. Cancel. Okay, everybody, that's going to be our little break until 12 p.m. your time, about 1 hour and 20 minutes from now. 12 p.m. GMT. And we will see you then and start on the path to Sirius, which should be very interesting, very tantalizing, very difficult in some ways.